So I'm talking with Dr Lyn Cronin, who is a lecturer in the early years and has a focus on children's transition to school. But can you start by telling us about your original research that you did with regard to children transitioning from early childhood environments or families to school?
Yes, okay, Leanne. I'll go back to a few years ago. I guess it all started when I was a primary school teacher. I taught kindergarten for many years, and that's where my interest really began in transition to school, because I saw these little people come in and some of them were having a wonderful experience and others not so much. So I decided to look into it, and I tracked 7 little children from the early childhood centre and followed them. So I did research around what they were doing, particularly in terms of literacy in their early childhood centre. And we made digital stories, and they got to have their say on what was important to them. So I really felt it was important to listen to their voice. And that was the crux, I guess, of my research then. And I tracked them into their first year in primary school and then found out from them how they were going, what they thought about it, and we made digital stories again, and we got a really nice perspective on how it looked and how it was different. And I thought from that what sorts of things were beneficial, I guess, for children as they transitioned, and what sort of things inhibited that smooth and successful transition for some of them.
So from a child's perspective then, what makes for a successful transition to school?
Mostly, there were a few things. One of them was being familiar with the environment and having that continuity of friends and relationships, and I guess knowing what they're in store for and feeling comfortable in their new surroundings and feeling that they were confident to be able to participate in the learning that was on offer. Particularly my focus was on literacy, as I said. So they spoke about knowing the rules and the routines. That was really important, that they had that down, what it was expected of them, and that they felt confident in doing that. And they didn't use those words so much, but we interpreted their behaviours in that way. And yeah, having friendships, children really say is the most important thing, someone to play with, to enjoy. Yes.
So from their early childhood settings perhaps, or their community relationships, they had someone who they could go to school with.
Yes, yeah, friends and family members, cousins and relatives that were at the school at the time featured in their stories.
So even if families, for instance, move to a new area, which sometimes they do when they're transitioning to school, when their young children are transitioning to school, that's just kind of indicative for families to understand that it is those relationships that are important for children, even if they're not automatically connected to their community. Something for families and teachers to think about as they're transitioning.
Yeah, relationships is a huge factor, and early childhood centres do that really well, build relationships with families. And at that time of transition, we really try and promote that relationship then, including the school and the teachers, so there's continuity. And schools are doing it really well now too. They're tapping into what the children have done before they came to school and what sorts of interests they have and how they can support them and I guess continue on with what they know and can do, and to support that as a basis into their new learning at school. So,
because as we know, so much happens before children go to school.
Yes,
so much learning takes place, and that's great for schools to be recognising that and acknowledging.
Yes, and tapping into play, I think there as well, they're doing particularly well now, or starting to think about, to get those experiences, build on those experiences from preschool. So it is relationships make that happen.
So for people and adults can often remember their transition to school, and that sometimes it can be challenging. We've had children this year start school, and then obviously because of COVID-19 have had to withdraw from the school environment. So we've got children who might have started school and now soon going back into the school environment for what probably feels like the first time again. So what guidance could you give around how families could ease that transition back into school and be talking with teachers about?
Yes, I think you're right. Children will be feeling quite anxious about going back to school, and many parents are feeling anxious for their children as well. And they haven't had a lot of time from the start of the year, particularly the little ones. It might be their first time at school, and they're just starting to get used to those routines and the rules and all the expectations around schools and making new friends. And 10 or so weeks can seem like a lifetime when you're that age. So for parents, I think to sit and chat with their little ones about all the things that they liked about school when they were there, and remember fondly the friends that they made, and talk about the teacher and the experiences that they can sort of try and remind them, I guess, of all the enjoyable things about school, and tap into some of those school activities. Many teachers send home packs of things to do, and I feel that parents need to be given permission not to beat themselves up over not being able to complete all those types of activities, but just to do the sorts of things that they would have normally done as home experiences, reading and talking to their children, playing with them when they get the chance, those sorts of things to ease them back into those routines, I guess, and routines as well, thinking about how they can remember the routines and perhaps put some of them in place on those days when they're at home to slowly encourage those.
And what about people making decisions? I mean, people will have been thinking about that decision about sending their children to school if they're in an early childhood setting. And that is always it can be a difficult conversation where people feel that their child is not ready for school, and a lot of this decision making happens now. Perhaps their early childhood education has been disrupted by the pandemic, and so what are the sorts of conversations that you feel families could have, possibly with early childhood educators, in terms of this movement into the formal schooling?
Yes, I think they need to be. Readiness for school is such a sort of a muddy area, because what does it mean to be ready? And that depends on the context, and it's different for every child. So having conversations with early childhood educators in their centres is a great idea, because they know them very well in a different context from the home. So getting their perspective. But ultimately it comes down to what the parents think and what's best for them, and what they think is best for them, their families, and for their children. We would say social and emotional skills are really important for moving into school, so when children feel confident in themselves to talk to peers, to talk to other adults, to have the ability to make friends and feel comfortable in a setting outside the home, that's a really nice indicator that they might be ready for school. Other areas that parents worry about are academic skills, which are nice if children are interested and are interested in doing those formalised academic school skills. They help when children get to school, but they're not the most important thing. I think the most important thing is for children to feel comfortable and valued in the setting, and those sort of academic skills will come. So talking to the early childhood educators and getting an idea of what they think is a nice idea for parents. But yeah, I think they have to sort of trust their instincts as well, and think what's best for my child, depending on what school that they're going to, how they think they're going to be ready, if they know people, if they have friends that are going.
Back to the relationships
Back
again.
to the relationships,
Yeah.
and I think, there's lots of different things that they can consider. But if the child wants to go to school, they're looking forward to it, and mostly they are, and it doesn't mean that they won't be anxious to some degree. But that's a nice indicator if they're ready as well, if they've got friends and they're keen and they're talking about it.
So we pretty much always talk about school readiness. So what about ready schools? What does the environment look like when a school is ready for a child who's moved through their community and their early childhood education, possibly, hopefully? What does a school look like when it's ready for a child?
Yeah, that's a really nice way to put it, because we don't want to put the onus on the children to be ready. We want the schools to be ready for whomever comes through that door, and that means they have to have wonderful transition programs in place where they have time to get to know the children, get to know their families, and communicate and build that relationships with the families, which is not as easy as it is in early childhood centres. So they have to really intentionally make that time and plan their transition programs around those opportunities to get to know children and families. So a positive transition for children moving into schools would be one where they feel, children and the families feel really valued, feel that what they say is important, feel that they're listened to, that they're able to tap into the teachers and the school leadership teams, in a sensible way when they can. So I think there's it's about communication and relationships, and you want the children to feel like they belong.
Okay, so that again we get back to relationships.
It sounds like repetitive, but really that is
Not at all.
the most important thing, that they feel that, even if they can't do particular skills as some children do, that it's not a competitive environment, that they feel that what they do matters and that's important and they can contribute in that setting. Yeah.
So putting your teacher hat on, from your memory of being as someone receiving children into the school environment, what does a great transition look like?
Yes, I think a great transition is one, as I said, that has time to spend getting to know the children. I know back many years ago when I transitioned children into school, not knowing what I know now, it was all about the learning. Come on, I'm going to sit down, I'm going to do this and do that in fun and interesting ways. But it just didn't suit everyone because not everyone was there yet. And what I didn't do was to make connections to what those children were coming to school with. So I think today teachers are really good at and working towards finding out what the children know and can do. And we've got some assessments that do that, but aside from those assessments in terms of literacy and numeracy, we want to find out what they're interested in, what they like to do at home, what they're good at, and value that and make them feel that they are confident and competent at participating in school at the start. And I think sometimes when we rush into the academic side of school and there's pressures for teachers to do that at times, then that's when children feel that they're not confident. They're not confident at being able to do some of the things that they've been asked to do because they're not familiar with them and they're not used to doing them. And we don't want to see that pushed down into preschools to create those types of tensions to learn things that children are just not ready for. And some are and some aren't, and developmentally that's very acceptable at that age.
And it sounds like you're saying that families and early childhood teachers are a great resource for schools to be hearing about the interests and the capacity of each child as well, and their relationships too.
Yes, that's right. And a good transition to school program for schools and early childhood centres is having those communications and passing on that information in really meaningful ways.
Thank you, Lyn. That was great.
Thank you. Thanks, Leanne.